Welcome to the Winners Table, where the conversation is different when you sit with the winners. I'm your host, Amber Wright, and today I am joined by Mike Goodwin, comedian and keynote speaker. We've got Watchen Nyanue, the CEO of I Choose the Ladder, and the lovely Chanel Martin of Kingdom Business Network. Today, we're going to have a great conversation about the pressures of entrepreneurship and the pressures specifically of Black entrepreneurship. Would you all say that there's a difference?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, well, let's get into it. Oh, I love this agreement. Let's get into it. Talk to me then about what some of the general pressures are that relate to entrepreneurship and business. When you think about your journeys, what have been some of the things that you have encountered that might be kind of some things that we all have in common?
Well, I can start. So when I first started entrepreneurship, I started in the tech space. Okay. And I was one of those who got an opportunity to go to like tech startup, accelerator programs. And so we were a group of Black women in hair care and technology, which was something new back then. We're talking about 10 plus years ago. So what happened was we were there with our white counterparts. Okay. And the speed at which they were able to move, you know, the only money we had was the $30,000 grant that they gave us. So they had the $30,000 grant, that was chump change. They had their uncles, they had trust funds that they could pull from. They had so many other resources. So we over here trying to count our pennies and get ourselves going, and they were able to move so much quicker because they had access to capital. And it wasn't just from a perspective of investments, it was being able to pull from family and friends and being able to pull a significant amount of money. And that's when I knew this wasn't the same game.
Yeah. So you're saying that they already had so much further of a runway before even getting into the accelerator.
Absolutely. It's like they just woke up and said, I'm gonna start a business. And Uncle Bob was like, sure, how much money do you need? And I'm like, I'm gonna start a business. And my family like, are you sure? I mean, what about your job? I'm like, that's how you know we playing a different game.
And to that extent, like that's what I would say one of the biggest pressures is to prove to other Black people that it's not just a hobby, that your business is actually a legitimate business, right? So I just had a conversation yesterday with someone in my network who we wanted to hire for business development. Now, granted, we have clients, blah, blah, all these things. It's been 2 months. They're like, oh, I still owe you a call. Sir, this is not a hobby. Like, this is an actual business with actual employees. Like, the fact that because we are known to have side hustles, right? Like, you got your job, and you got this, and you got that. When someone puts together an entrepreneurial venture that is a legitimate business, I think the pressure to prove, like, this is not a game. Like, this is something you should take seriously. To our own people, it's something like I didn't anticipate, right? And for the white folks, like, it is different, right? They have everything that they do to them is serious. And they're like, oh my God, you want to do this? Yes, we're behind you 100%. Let's see who I know. Let's see whatever. And their community, I think, looks at their trying entrepreneurship a little bit different than the way that we look at it. And so I feel a pressure to prove that, like, I'm not out here playing. Like, I'm actually trying to build a company that employs us. And so getting people to take you seriously, I think, is a pressure.
Yeah, but that also speaks to a pressure that's specific to us as a group. Because being historically excluded, you just have your good government job, you do what's safe, you get your check, your direct deposit, and you move on. So entrepreneurship feels like play. It feels so risky, even though we might have entrepreneurial spirits. We all might have had that uncle or Paul or a friend or somebody in the family who did a little something, but to do it at the level at which you all are doing it is interesting. And then for you to say, Watchen, I think that's such a great point about, one, proving to yourself that this is an idea that I have the courage to pursue that's viable, and then proving to your mama and them that it's worthwhile. I really love that you brought that up. What about you, Mike? What would you say?
I echo what they say, but even in the artist space, it's tremendously more scrutinized. Yeah, you telling jokes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're gonna leave a serious job with benefits to be out here telling jokes. You a clown.
That's the joke, right?
You a clown.
Wait, is that a joke?
You a clown. No, I experienced it. Here's the other thing that one of my markers for success was I wanted people to stop asking me, was I still doing comedy? Like that, when I would have, I'll see somebody, hey man, you still doing your stand-up comedy thing? Like, I wanted to be so successful. Well, that's not a question anymore. I want you to understand that, oh man, where you headed next? What's your next thing that you're doing? So when you're doing an art, people have no idea. Even the artists themselves don't realize. It took me a while to transition from being an artist to being an entrepreneur, because initially you come into this experience not thinking entrepreneur, not thinking like, how can I monetize my talent? How can I monetize my skill? So you're just, hey, I need to get bigger opportunities. I need more people to see me. And you're not even thinking about business.
How did you make that transition? Because that's a good point that you're making as talent. When I love the variety of perspectives that we're offering here as talent, you walk into, you're like a cog in a wheel.
Right.
They're already having an event and you're just you're a line item on that event. And they might not necessarily realize that there's a whole business that surrounds you because they want to deal directly with you, maybe not an agent if you don't have that yet. So what was that like for you to transition from being an act to a business owner?
This is, I've had like few pillar moments in my career when I told myself I wanted to get off the chitlin circuit. I said, I got to get off the chitlin circuit. And what I mean by the chitlin circuit, you know the old school R&B groups. They get in the van and they do all the juke joints and they do the hole in the walls. And that's what I was doing, family reunions. Okay. So I had to start saying, okay, I can't be dependent on people booking me. I need to project a image in which I have the autonomy. And I say, okay, these are the places I want to go and these are the people I want to work with.
Yeah, that's such a really relevant example. And thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about how you have navigated these things. I'm sure we could be here all day just talking about the pressures themselves. And I want to continue to have a discussion about what some of those things look like. I think access to capital is massive. Yeah. That's actually, let's stay there for a second. Let's talk about what that has been like. So you shared with us, Chanel, about this experience. And we kind of know that happens. And particularly for Black women specifically, start businesses at a greater rate, a faster rate than all of their counterparts, but receive less than 2% of funding. So as CEOs of your own ventures, how have you navigated that in terms of you leveraging capital, pursuing it, or have you not? Or have you taken it the bootstrapped route?
I don't know if you want my answer to that question. Because I think that a lot of times as business owners, we focus on access to capital. We don't focus on being prepared to maximize that capital, right? So we're like, oh, we're going to raise all this money. And what are you going to do with it? Right. So for me, I have not raised any money. Because one, I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm coming to you because I need you. If we're at the table, let's be at a table because it's mutually beneficial. Because I feel like people already try to play Black businesses. So if you're at the table and it feels like you're begging for, or whatever the case may be, they approach you a lot differently than if they see you at your business, you as an entrepreneur, as a viable partnerships for them, right? And so I think of the pressures, yes, we do need to raise capital. Yes, we do need capital. But on the flip side of that, behind closed doors, we need to be preparing Black entrepreneurs to maximize that capital. Yes, the white boys get to get money and they waste it. We're not the white boys, right? The expectations are different. The pressures are different. And so, yes, raise all the money that you want, but make sure, because we don't have an uncle or a well to dig in 12 times, right? Yeah. You may get 1 or 2 points where you have access to this capital, making sure as Black folks, as Black people building businesses, we're preparing the ones to be able to maximize that. I feel like it's a conversation we don't have enough.
So I can definitely relate to that. One of my first businesses was a hair tech company that I am now not an active co-founder. I am a silent partner. And we started out raising capital because that's what you did. I went to tech school, you raised capital. And one of the biggest mistakes, and if I could go back in time, they taught us how to raise money, but not how to make money. So we spent a lot of our time crafting pitches, trying to go to investor meetings. We spent years doing that, looking for the next funding opportunity instead of trying to figure out how do we learn our target audience and how to sell to make reoccurring revenue. I remember we were pitching our now patented technology. Okay. You know how to throw that out. And
I caught it.
You caught it, all right. And one of the things they said to us was, do Black women really spend money on their hair? Do they have money to spend? I promise you.
I'm like, all right, I'm gonna head out.
Right.
I'm head out. I gotta go.
And so it was like we were not believable. Yeah. Now I do think the landscape has changed now. I told you that was over 10 years ago. I think it's, they're a lot more receptive to Black women entrepreneurs because of a lot of the successes my peers have made. But at that time, we were anomalies. Yeah. But then when I think about it now, as we are in an upcoming recession, right? Now what's happening is where people were having these large volumes of cash flow, a lot of people's cash flow reserves are low, right? So this is probably the time where we probably actually really need the capital. Mm-hmm. And so how do you create a conversation, or how do you get those connections to be able to access those funds?
Right. Yeah, this is so interesting, because now again we're stacking up this pressure box here, because we've got, what I'm hearing is this question of invisibility and viability and expending so much energy just to prove that this is something that's worth investing in, as we're talking specifically about raising capital. So Mike, for you, talk to us about what has been your approach to that, because be it talent and be it in the arts, it's still a business, as we have discussed. So do you lean more to bootstrapping because you are the product yourself, or have you expanded your offerings that would maybe require you to raise capital? What has been your approach to that on your journey?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's the same for all of us is the idea of the pressure to succeed. So there's not a lot of margin for risk. And what happens also is there's a pressure to be in a community with folks that are doing what you're doing. Because when you start, we're all just kind of trying to figure it out. But then you start having some success. Now the support system that you started with is like, oh, he think he better than us. Oh, you got this. Now you're excluded from the already small, look at Mr. America's Got Talent. And you're like, bro, why you calling me that? You my man. So now you're excluded from the already small group. So now we have to find community. So the pressure to find community where you don't have to prove to people that, hey man, I'm serious, I got great work ethic, I know what I'm doing, I know I'm going to have vision. When I started, you're basically trying to get more opportunities to get bigger paychecks, to get bigger gigs, to get in front of bigger audiences. And what happens is you're not thinking about scaling. You're not thinking about marketing. You're not thinking about the things that are the foundational parts of a business. I'm just trying to get gigs. And running gigs is not gonna run a business. So you're in that E-Myth idea of, I'm a comedian, but my business is languishing. It's not even really a business. Like, I'm just working another job. And so I think the pressure that I found myself is, how do I make more money doing less things?
Yep. Come on, somebody.
I mean, that's
I like
a mic
that.
drop.
I like that.
We all are,
that's
right?
the goal. And there's a transition for me as a consultant, coach, and speaker, moving from gig to engagement. I have a speaking engagement, not just a gig. Because again, this is mindset too that we're talking about as well, and making these transitions. So I'm glad that we're able to, again, have these varied perspectives about what this takes. And so this is actually a really good segue into my next question about support, because I want to know from all of you so it's a two-parter, how do you handle these things, this pressure that is so, it's not even singular. Like you said, you're not even really just accountable to yourself. You got the whole community. Not only does your community look at you as the one, then everyone else is looking at you as the soul, the black one who's going to be the unicorn or what have you.
I know how you have it. Cocaine.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, nope, cut. Nope, absolutely not.
Oh, that's another
wrong
show.
Wrong show. Nope. There would be no, black folks don't use drugs.
This is the winner's table, Mike.
Maybe in a glass of wine.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of wine. A lot of wine.
But yeah.
Okay, we're gonna bring that back and say, how do you legally handle the pressure?
So here's what I will say to Mike's question about community, right? Or his statement about community. Being around people does not make you in community, right? You can be around a lot of people, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the kind of support, the kind of thought partnership, the type of people who are going to different places but have the same spirit and the same ethic as you do. For me, that's how I look at community, right? Okay. And so before I took the leap into full-time entrepreneurship, I have a friend who's a full-time entrepreneur. Her name is Kim Lewis. And I was like, Kim, what did you do for it? She was like, oh, I joined this group, right? And she was like, and in this group, there are people who like from a bunch of different business owners, but they're all Black and they are all like serious about their business and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I got to get into that. Right. And she was like, well, I think they just closed it. And like, we joke about this all the time, but I was like, no, I have to get into that because I was like, I'm very corporate. My whole, like I've been corporate, a senior corporate executive. And so my mentality, all of my friends are corporate. And so I was like, okay, in corporate, I needed this group of Black folks to help me navigate the stuff. When I'm going into full-time entrepreneurship, I need the same, right? And not just other entrepreneurs. I knew specifically I needed Black entrepreneurs because like you talk about, it's not the same race that we're running with like our counterparts. And so it was like, yes, find a group and then find your group within that group, right? Yeah. The small group of people who check on you, who you check on, who support the things that you do, who just want to know if you're okay, right? Like I feel like to me, that has been my saving grace, is that I have people who are also serious about their own businesses, but they're serious about me too. Like they do not play about me in that community. We don't play about each other. And so I think having that has made all the difference for me.
I love that.
So being married has helped. My husband is not an entrepreneur, has no desire to be an entrepreneur, and I think I scare him daily with entrepreneurship. He doesn't know what to expect. He likes to know you're going to go to work at 9 and you're going to get off at 5, and then you're going to have the rest of your day and your weekends are to yourself. So that is, from that perspective, and if I'm being honest, is a daily struggle, even though I've been doing this for 10 years. Because he's corporate, you know, there was a little thing around where they talk about entrepreneurs only need to marry an entrepreneur, not this entrepreneur. Yeah. Because we had health insurance. We had health insurance. You know, we had a solid paycheck every month. You know, we weren't trying to go hustle, you know. He's very good at what he does. So he is has a well-paying, high-paying job, even in this economy that we're in right now. And he's extremely stable. So I couldn't imagine being 100% on my own with 4 children. And so having that support at home, having that support when I want to go to conferences, my husband's going to be there. I might be gone. This week was super busy for me. I was gone pretty much the whole week, and he was going to do that because he ain't going nowhere. Like, you know, he works from home, you know? So I would love for people to have more of the conversations around like being married and those benefits of that.
I thank you for saying that and for sharing that, because we have had conversations at the Winners Table about how a lot of times there's the smoke and mirrors of social media and the things that people want to present out and have folks, the selling of a lifestyle. And it's not always truthful. We can say that for some folks, not for everybody, but being employed and or having a partner that is employed, that does impact your approach to entrepreneurship. It's very similar for me. I've been married, it'll be a long time, and long time. And I'm grateful that he can be an anchor for me in that, one, he's never clipped my wings. And he's never sought to hinder me, because some partners can be threatened when they see you out and you're speaking engagements and you're out and doing things and corporate gigs and all this stuff. And that might challenge them. This might be a whole nother episode, honestly. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, because that is an added pressure, because now we're talking about having to also prove to your partner that you're serious, and who you partner with can have an impact on your approach to business and to entrepreneurship, how much you're able to scale. But I appreciate you raising that, because it is another challenge, another pressure to navigate, to say, does my family believe in me? And I got to prove to the world that my business is viable and that I'm committed to what I'm doing. And I also have to prove that at home. And that can be taxing.
That was my pressure. So when I started entrepreneurship and my husband was not really for it, like I put a lot of pressure on myself to really be successful, almost to my detriment. Like I was like, I just got to, and even though he never said that, I felt it, and it was in my brain, and I said, no, I have to prove to him. And I remember one time, one of my earmarks for success was we had a few credit cards that had been lingering, and I went and I was like, bam, I'm paying that off. Bam, I'm paying that off. Paying that off. Like, and I remember I like gave him like a wad of cash. Was I like, look, it's the little hood in me. I gave him like a wad of cash. Like, is this fake
now? You want me to go back to my job now? Right? Like,
But he's very supportive, but I mean, he's human, right? And I told you, he's one of the ones that loves his job and he don't understand why I ain't love none of my jobs. And I'm like, that's just not my path.
Sure. And circling back to what you were saying, watching about being employed. I've always had multiple things going at the same time. And I remember it was someone in the TSP community was like, I was a professor for a while, for a long time. And I was doing that while I was also growing my business. And she asked me to engage in a project and I turned it down because I couldn't because of my workload and my course load. And she said, "Oh, you still doing that? Do you want to pay my mortgage?" Or, I mean, because, so I was like, yeah, I'm absolutely going to teach until I feel like I can make this transition and step into my business full time. And I don't make apologies about that. We all have a different path to entrepreneurship and what it means to us and what we want to get out of it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with staying employed while you figure that out.
So I just finished my MBA, right? And the program that I went to, and this is not a flex, it is like the #1 MBA program, period. When I graduated,
go ahead.
when I graduated, they were like, "Oh, so what are you gonna do now?" What you mean? Like, are you gonna go get a consulting job at McKinsey? What? I'm like, I have a job. Like, I have a whole but like I answered that question so many because the assumption is, if you're going to that school, it must be because you want to be,
More
the
than what you
COO.
already are.
And I'm just like, no, I check this box so that I can charge more. Like this, it's not it's not like I'm now pursuing I could have gotten that higher level job in corporate without this degree, right? And so but the people who even asked me that question, I was shocked at. And I'm not as graceful as you are. I'd be like, what? Like, what? Girl, bye, right? Like I'm still working on that part of myself.
My answer was a little different, but we.
But we on the we at the winners table.
Yeah.
But
I say it all the time.
But the conversation is different.
it's a little different.
I say it all the time. I am very employable. Like, people would love to have me in the organization.
Correct.
But back to the pressure of the family, people ask me, do my family get to travel with me? And I always saw the inconsistency of that because I also was in the military at one point. And no one, when I would go on drill, when I would go to no one ever stopped me when I was in my BDUs. Hey,
Was your wife doing
Lieutenant,
drugs?
Lieutenant Goodwin, did your family get to travel? So I used to like, what are y'all doing? And so I refuse to accept the pressures of other people. Like, I don't want your pressure. I got enough of my own. I'm not going to accept the pressure that you bring and drop at my doorstep.
You're so good at offering up segues, Mike, because my next question is, what strategies have worked for you to reject some of those pressures? So I think what I hear you saying is that you have rejected that
Well, the first
and
thing
not
I've done-
internalize other people's ideas about what you should be doing.
I told what is my definition of success? I've made that foundational in me. This is what I think success is. And this is what is success to me. Whether I get on Saturday Night Live, because people want me to be on their favorite thing. So, hey, you've been on this NPR show called da-da-da. No, that's not success. This is success over here. So, number one, I don't accept other people's definition of success. I know what my definition of success is. So that's one of the things. I think the other thing is constant personal development, right? So your mindset. When you are thrust into entrepreneurship, you figure out, hey man, my best asset is myself, and I need to invest in me. Where in corporate, you invest in the company, you invest in your team, your department. And so that was a change for me. Like, the better I am, the better I can be as a husband, as a father, as a comedian. So I made that shift to, I'm going to continuously invest in myself and have tremendous self-awareness to make the adjustments.
And I would say for me, it's like a nature versus nurture thing, right? Like, I was born as someone who always did what I wanted. Like, you can ask my parents, right? And then add on top of that, I lived through a war for 2 years. And so I think in my formative years, I saw that like life could be gone like this. And so I'm gonna do what I want with my parents, and I'm African, right? So Africans are and my parents and I have had a conversation. My mom would be like, well, I think you should. I was like, well, you do it. Most of the time, I don't feel that kind of pressure because I do know that like I only have this one life. And I'm the person who deals with the consequences of my decisions the most. And so I gotta make sure that like what I'm doing, I'm willing to ride for those consequences. And so I think my parents gave up on me in like high school. They were just like, they knew I was gonna be fine, right? Like, they're like, she has the skills that she's gonna be fine, but she's not really someone you could tell what to do. You just gotta kind of go along for the ride or not. And that's kind of how I've been most of my life.
And I can say for me, definitely what Mike said is a therapist.
Oh, yes.
So I have a therapist. I've hired executive coaches to help me navigate like the difficulties inside of entrepreneurship. I'm very strong in my faith, so definitely prayer. I'm at church regularly, and just really being reflective. So every morning I get up, I do affirmations. I make sure I'm running, I'm doing my fitness. I am eating really good. Like I'm really taking care of my body and being intentional about my day. And so being okay with the world still going on while you're being disciplined. So being disciplined, I would say, is like my way that I cope with my pressure, because when I'm not disciplined, I'm all over the place.
Yeah, that a lot of that is the same for me as well. Rejecting other people's ideas about how you should live your life. But going back to this pressure piece, and before we get ready to wrap, similarly to you, I remember the first speaking engagement I had where the check was more money than I had made teaching all like 4 classes for the whole month. And he said, "Oh, what is it? What? This what we doing? Yeah. Yes. This is what we're doing." Right. And he so happily drove me down to that Chase Bank. Like, well, when's the next one? You know?
You need more of those, girl. Get you some more of those.
You need that. So thank you all for sharing a lot of these suggestions and ideas that are working for you, but I think will become strategies that for the folks who are watching, that they can take little pieces of it, and defining for yourself what success is. That's paramount for me. My 5-point definition of success is that I'm able to pay my bills with money left over at the end of the month. Right. I'm able to give and be a blessing to other people. I'm able to travel and have new experiences. I'm able to be physically, financially, and emotionally available and present for my children. And I have autonomy of my time. So if I'm doing those things in some form or fashion, I feel successful. And that detaches me from any outcomes or any pressures, because when I went back to corporate, I was recruited for a role at an accounting, one of the big 4. And my friends were like, "Oh, but what about your business? What about it?" The thing about entrepreneurship is you can make it what you want to. So let me go ahead and get this
get this corporate check.
Collect this check. I missed
and not corporate
those checks.
Corporate engagement.
How about that? Okay. How about that? And so, but you've got to know yourself. Right. And you have to know what works for you, because what works for me may not work for Watchen, and what works for Watchen may not work for Mike, and so forth. So is there any final thoughts that you'd like to share about navigating the pressures of Black entrepreneurship?
I think that what I will say is the pressure is going to be there. You need to, I think there's a Jim Rohn quote that says, "Don't wish that things were easier, wish that you were better." And so be prepared for the pressure. Storms are coming. So don't allow pressure to be the reason you don't make it to the prize, because there's always a prize after that pressure.
Did you impress yourself?
I saw it too.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Snaps. Watching.
So I would say don't run from a job, run to entrepreneurship. Because then you can deal with the pressures a little bit differently, right? If it's not an escape, like, oh my God, my job is so terrible, so I'm gonna go start this thing. Yeah. But if there's a calling that you feel like, I need to put this thing out into the world. And then the second part of that is like, don't let the pressures rob you of the joy. Entrepreneurship can be such a beautiful, joyous thing. It doesn't mean there's not pressures in a lot of other things. But man, when you have a goal and you see it like in real life, something that was just like in your mind, and now you see, like, there's no feeling like that. So don't let the pressures rob you of the joy.
And I would say, remember why you started. Remember your initial why. Write it down, journal, whatever you got to do, because it always goes back to, why am I doing this? Again, like Mike said, what's your definition of success? And if you can couple your real why, if it was a real honest why, and couple that with discipline, I believe that you can overcome any pressures that are thrown your way.
It's beautiful. Thank you all so much. This was a wonderful conversation. Thanks for joining us at the Winner's Table. We'll see you next time.
The Combo, your home for conversations on Black entrepreneurship and wealth, available on your favorite platforms.